Ready to go?
Soon as the slides are.
Should we get started? Good, okay. Good morning, everyone. This is the fourth meeting of the Extended Producer Responsibility Commission. My name is John Vealing. I'm the chair of the commission. I'm a deputy commissioner with the MassDEP. First thing we need to do is call the roll. When I call your name, please state present. Start with Sarah Kalish,
Present.
Darlene Lapointe or Chris Callahan,
Present.
Zeus Smith,
Present.
David Melly.
Can you go in alphabetical order, John?
Oh, I'm sorry, this is
Thank you.
the,
It should be on the screen.
oh, thank you. I
Thank you.
have my own list here. Okay, I will,
Thank you.
okay, I'll start over. I won't, if I've already called you, I'll try not to call you again. Representative Barber. Senator Barrett. Sharon Byrne Kashida. Lee Ann Cole.
Max Hayworth present for Leanne Cole for Community Action Works.
Thank you. Counselor Delgado.
Present.
Janet Dominitz.
Here.
Lou Dubuque.
Present.
Magda Garnkarts. Sarah Kalish.
Present.
I believe I already called Chris Callahan.
David Milling is here.
David Melly. You're Connor O'Shaughnessy. Andrew Potter.
Present.
Catherine Mata. Bill Rennie.
Present. Oh, sorry.
Okay. Neil
Yeah.
Ryan. Juanita Traber.
Present.
Zeus Smith is here. Abby Webb.
Present.
All right, I believe we have a quorum. Yeah, I think we do, right?
I know the representative Barber and Sharon said they were gonna be present, so they may just be running a little late.
Okay. All right, so first thing we need to do this morning is approve the agenda, which is distributed prior to the meeting. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Sorry, who moved?
Who moved?
Andy
First.
Potter.
Thank you.
Delgado.
Thank you. All right, all in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the agenda is approved. I believe we've got some proposed changes to the meeting minutes that we received from some commission members. Everyone should be able to see those on the screen if you want to take a minute to look at those. And then we'll move to approve the minutes as amended. And I'll give folks a minute or so just to review these changes. They're pretty straightforward. Does anyone have any questions about the proposed changes to the June 18th meeting minutes? Can I get a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
So
Second.
Did you get who seconded it?
No.
Sorry, okay.
Can I go back a little bit and you can be able to see what you.
Yeah, what you need, Jen?
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. So, all in favor of approving the minutes as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm gonna be that nerd that points out, I think box spring is one word. It's too late in the minute.
Oh, Bucks, right?
No, it's children. It is, I don't know that. This is important.
I'm gonna make an executive decision that is, you can use either. All right, so this morning's meeting is gonna be devoted to paint. However, we would like to discuss the mattress recommendation that was distributed.
You meant that.
Did I say? No, I think we're gonna talk about the mattress. Today's meeting is mattress. What did I say? I said, today's meeting is batteries, but we're gonna talk about mattresses first, just to confuse everyone. So we had distributed the mattress recommendation previously, and I think we have a screenshot of that, correct?
Yes.
Here's the agenda and goals.
Okay, yeah, so just to review the bidding, we just did most of that. But we are gonna talk about the mattress recommendation, then we're gonna talk about past and present battery EPR efforts, talk about those efforts. And then talk about what types of battery EPR recommendations we might want to make to the legislature. And so with that, and this is our order of presentation, we're gonna have a discussion after we go through the mattress EPR. We'll have a presentation on battery. We're gonna also hear from the fire marshal about fire concerns with these batteries. Have the clarifying questions, remind everyone that this is clarifying just for the presentation. There'll be a room for further discussion after that. And then we'll have public input, and then we'll talk about next steps. So I think with that, we can move to the mattress recommendation that was submitted or distributed among the commission members. Give everybody a minute just to read this if you haven't had a chance. This is based upon our last meeting and the input we got from the commission. Now, we had decided, given timing, I think it's proven difficult to get these out with there's not a lot of time between these meetings anyway. And then I know certain organizations have a pretty lengthy approval process, so taking that into account, we thought it was appropriate to not have the formal vote on this recommendation until September, but we would like to say this is where we believe we will eventually land and have an actual formal vote in September. But now would be a good opportunity if folks have questions, comments on this recommendation, we can certainly take those into account. But this is what we believe the recommendation should look like. It was maybe some adjustments, but this is based upon our prior discussions. I think the actual recommendation is fairly broad. It's just really based on other programs that we've heard about. Some of the concerns we heard raised had to do with the fees, whether you should have a fee based upon the cost of the mattress. I think we heard both sides of that equation, whether it makes sense and whether it's more difficult to implement. Disposal costs, should that be taken into account? Should the fee be collected at the wholesale or retail level? At present, all the mattress EPR programs collect at the retail sale level. And then should there be a fee that covers some partial cost of municipal curbside collection? We heard from Councilor Delgado on that issue. And I think it's certainly a valid concern, but what we were gonna propose is not for us to make that call. This we think should probably be a legislative call, but just to call out the various issues that were identified as potential issues in eventually either putting this in legislation or enabling, regulation, which the legislature could basically direct DEP to issue regulations in which some of those concerns could be addressed. So there's pros and cons for doing that. But I think our view is to identify these issues for the legislature and let them make a decision. So does anyone have any questions, comments about the recommendation as drafted? Yes.
So I actually disagree with the way that it's framed as aligned with programs already in place in neighboring states of Connecticut and Rhode Island. There was an effort underway within the past 3 years to improve upon that model, and that was done in Oregon. And so the law that passed in Oregon is the most up to date in the country. And it would be best if the commission recommended that newer model. And Bill H 1023 does align with that model. And I know I've said this in past meetings, but I would, in the acknowledgement about the bills, I think it's very factual to state that a specific bill aligns with the above recommendation, or like has the same provisions as the above recommendation. Not endorsing a bill, it's just factually stating that this bill before the legislature has the same model that we are recommending.
And I think we did do that with paint, correct? I think we didn't endorse, but we acknowledged that it aligned with the principles.
I don't think that that language made it into the final.
Okay. But we.
I can revisit it, but
Yeah,
I don't have it.
Okay, it did not, okay. I think, and we expressed kind of our concern of kind of picking winners, you know, as a creature of the legislature, I think. My view as chair is that we should be identifying that there's bills, but I feel like it would potentially be kind of overstepping for us to say, this is the one we think you should do. We identify them.
Well, we're not saying that, or what I'm proposing is not saying that. It's saying that this bill
This is
that
the lines.
has been introduced,
Right.
has the same provisions as the model that we are recommending.
Do others have any thoughts on that concern? Mr. Rennie?
Well, I have thoughts on specifically on that, or?
Either, I mean, if you have thoughts on what Ms. Traver has said, that would be helpful, but that was the question.
Matt, again, I don't think we need to acknowledge the bills, similar to what we did in the legislature and those bills that they have. I think that the recommendation itself, you know, that we recommend, at least for me, recommending that they enact legislation prior to, you know, X date. Given that we have, I think, significant questions that still remain, is, you know, is not something I would particularly endorse. I think that, look, our commission, I believe, you know, initial recommendations are due by, what, December?
January.
January 15th.
Initial recommendations are due by January of next year. You know, having discussed mattresses for, you know, an hour, 90 minutes, I think, you know, we didn't really get at all the answers to the questions that remain. You know, you've got a state program that is comparable to, you know, the percentage recycling rates in those programs in other states. You know, you had a program in Rhode Island, and now all the recyclers have left Rhode Island. And I think there's more information that could be gleaned from that. So I just think there are significant concerns that still remain before I would vote to, you know, simply recommend that they act. I would prefer that it would be worded as something, you know, to be effective, you know, that the legislature could, you know, look to address and further dig into some of these questions, but I just don't, I'm not comfortable with utilizing it.
Thank you. Anyone else have any? Yes. Can I just remind folks to just state their names? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. I have one comment on the document itself. So, I think page 3 and 6, we have the executive summary and the intro. There's a little list of the sort of undesirable disposal outcomes for mattresses and combustions in the list. So I would add that alongside the filling, illegal dumping, et cetera. That's a small thing. One question that came up with my team was, whether it's our intent for EPR to go in on top of the ban or to replace the ban. I wasn't sure if we actually talked about that. And if, I guess follow-up question would be, do any of the other states have that, a ban and EPR? Are there pros and cons?
My sense is the ban would remain in place, and that the EPR program would serve to supplement or complement the ban and set up a process or a program to make it easier for folks to get rid of their mattresses.
Sure. I don't know if that's worth verifying in the document, this one.
Thank you. Yes.
And just to add, I think the curbside question is still significant in that the programs in other states don't do curbside pickup and, significant percentage of the population live in municipalities that currently rely on that. I think residents would expect that going forward. They buy a mattress, they pay a fee, I think they don't have to pay anything anymore. They live in the city, they don't have means to transport it. They're gonna have to pay to have that mattress picked up and transport, so. Again, I just think that's remaining concerns and questions.
Yes,
Christine Barber, as a legislator, I wanna say, I understand the challenges we're saying a specific bill, yeah, we do know what the bills that are before are, so, I think calling out to the earlier point, if there are, learnings from the Oregon program, which I believe is new, and then that is similar to a bill, not necessarily recommending it, but, providing that information and helpful context to us, and honestly. Details, and also I do agree on the curbside piece, I think that is a challenge that I understand, if that have curbside now, pay for it, which is a significant expense, but also something that people expect, and honestly, probably the only way they would get picked up in most cases. So I think that is a big challenge that I think.
so do you think we should call it out here, or is that something we should just leave to the legislature? It seemed to be a significant enough issue that we thought we should at least identify it. And I don't know how Oregon, sounds like they don't really address it, where they.
So in the discussions, the dialogue sessions that was hashed out in Oregon, in order to improve upon the model from Connecticut and Rhode Island and the experience in California, there was robust discussion about curbside collection, but ultimately it was deemed not feasible to include within the EPR program costs because the costs are so variable. Similar to Oregon, we have, a very urban part of our state and a very rural part of our state. Our state happens to be much smaller, but I would say, probably costs are a lot more here. So they looked at this extensively and it was not able to be solved. And so it is referenced in the bill language as, I think, premium service. But it basically states that, collection points need to arrange premium service, if they so choose. So that would be like a municipality hiring a contractor that then a resident could opt to pay for the transport from curbside. Yeah, there is not a good solution for it because costs would vary so much throughout the program. And it is a significant issue, but wearing my municipal hat, I work for the city of Newton, and even having this EPR system in place, it would still cut costs in half to have the system as it is recommended without the curbside collection option.
Thank you. All right, any other questions, comments about the proposed recommendation? So I think we'll sharpen our pencils, but I do expect we will take into consideration the comments we've received. We will redistribute the recommendation based upon some of the comments we've heard, and we'll take a formal vote on it at the meeting in September. And hopefully that'll give folks sufficient time to get the approvals they need from their organizations. Okay. All right, now on to today's presentation. Better, yes.
Quick question about the vote in September. When are you planning to circulate any updates for language so we can just plan accordingly? Or maybe you can call.
Couple weeks,
Oh, sooner.
yeah,
Probably.
certainly,
Few days.
certainly, just a few days,
Okay.
so they'll be like a couple months. I think
Okay.
we're trying to be sensitive to bureaucracy. I know a little bit about that. All right, on to batteries.
All right.
Is the
Am I,
open-
am I advancing or are you advancing for me?
Uh,
We will be advancing for you.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. My apologies for being a little bit late. I thought we were starting at 10, so I was jumping from another meeting, but I was finished with that, so happy to be here. My name is Mark Bullish. I'm Executive Director of PRBA, the Rechargeable Battery Association, and I will talk about batteries. So if we can go to the next slide. I'll do a brief introduction of who is PRBA, and then I'll talk about the goals and objectives of the effort for EPR for batteries. I'll also talk then about what else is happening in the US market, particularly around the state initiatives, and to some extent even a little bit about the federal efforts. And then I'll talk specifically about the PRBA model bill that we have and what it does, particularly around financing and how batteries are collected and recycled. As I mentioned, I'll cover the performance in other states and then what we see are metrics of success. And I did want to include just one item in here dealing with transportation and safety because it is a very important consideration. Um, just in general, I mean, safety is always something we need to be thinking about. And with the energetic nature of batteries, it's something that's very much in the news right now. So I just wanted to make sure we touched on that a little bit. So thank you. And next slide, please. So just as a real high level item, PRBA, we represent the makers and users and those involved in the supply chain from mining all the way through end of life and all points in between. Um, we have a fairly large group of members that that fit into those different categories. And if you go to the next slide, it has a little bit more detail, talks about this as a bullet list. So as I mentioned, we cover certainly the battery makers, but then others that use batteries, move them around, deal with them at end of life, test them, etc. So um, do get very involved in a lot of different battery issues, even aside from extended producer responsibility. PRBA gets involved in regulatory and legislative activities for anything that's common to the battery industry. We're dealing a lot with policy. Obviously, I talked just a second ago about safety as a primary item that we deal with, certainly battery recycling and collection. And then transportation and then fire codes is something else we get involved in too, because batteries at some point or at most points have to be stored somewhere. And when they're in bulk, there are fire codes that are important to make sure that are watched and reviewed and adhered to. Um, we also participate in a number of domestic as well as international transportation forums. I don't have them all listed here, but some of the bigger ones we participate in are transportation at the UN level, which covers the model regulations around all modes of transportation. And then particularly, we also get heavily involved in the air and the vessel transportation of dangerous goods. So next slide, please. So our goal here would be to look at establishing an all battery extended producer responsibility program in Massachusetts. This would cover, and when I say all battery here, it's not exactly all battery. This would be for small and medium format batteries. And the way to think of that would be small batteries are the ones that you can fit in your pocket. Medium-sized batteries you can still carry around, but unless you have very large pockets, you're not really going to be able to put those in your pocket. So those are the medium format are going to be the e-bike size batteries, some of the scooter batteries. Those are different than in what we call large format batteries, which are going to be things like energy storage and electric vehicle batteries. We are also looking as much as possible. There are currently 8 states right now that have battery extended producer responsibility laws that have passed. And as best we can, we would be very happy if we can harmonize as much as possible with those other state efforts. The focal points that we have for the model legislation, I will always start with safety because safety of people, property, and the environment are extremely important. So that is a focal point that we look at, but also convenience and state oversight in this. We want to make sure that those are all items that are being considered as we go through this. So next. We do have a couple notable exceptions to the model bill. I'll start with the recalled batteries. It's not that recalled batteries can't or should not be collected and recycled. They absolutely should. But when you get into recalls, when you have a stewardship organization or a shared service that a number of different producers are operating under, if you have 1, 2, 3, however many players that are instituting a recall for their products, it's not necessarily fair to have all the different companies pay for that effort. So the companies or the organizations that do manage the collection and recycling certainly have the ability to do that for recalled batteries, but we segment those out in our model legislation. So that is something that is directly attributed then to the recalling company or companies. We only accept non-consumer medical devices. And the reason for that is having an outright medical device exception would exclude things like I show on the right here, your battery operated toothbrush, your glucose meters, your blood pressure monitors, things that are very common household items that many consumers have. And although the numbers vary year on year, those devices represent somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 10% of all batteries that are used. And they're easily removable batteries. They are definitely consumer focused. You can buy them at your local drugstore. So we do exclude the medical devices that are, say, implanted, for example, but the common consumer items, we say those should not be excluded from this. We also exclude the free liquid electrolyte batteries and the lead acid batteries that are greater than 11 pounds because those batteries are already covered under a program. We exclude embedded batteries for now. Those are batteries that are not easily removable. It's a situation or a discussion that is happening across many different states. Some of the first few states that enacted battery legislation being Vermont, Illinois, and Washington State are looking at this right now, trying and have studies underway that the industry trade associations are also a part of, trying to figure out how to deal with embedded batteries because they're not necessarily exactly in the electronic space, they're not exactly in the battery space, and the consumers can't get to, say, a battery in an iPhone. So how do we deal with that? That is something that is being looked at. We have them excluded in the battery model bill for now, but we do have that study provision in there. And those studies have a due date of July of 2017 in those states that are looking at that. We also exclude motor vehicle batteries of all types. They are a rounding error on top of a rounding error of the number of batteries that are placed on the market. And they are found in so many different places in an automobile that they're essentially impossible to find in a lot of cases. So to avoid that complexity, we just exclude them from our model bill. And then in the case of large batteries, they have a very different supply chain and return logistics. It's much more commercial focused where consumers are not involved in that at all. So those batteries are excluded. And we do know that there are a lot of states, including Massachusetts, that are looking at EV EPR legislation separately. So next slide, please. Batteries are complicated, but when I mentioned this already to some extent, they do come in all shapes and sizes. This gives some examples of what we consider the different categories. You can see your small batteries, as I said, those are ones that normally would be small enough to fit in your pocket. Your medium batteries are going to be things like RV batteries or e-bike batteries. And then, of course, large batteries are electric vehicle. And of course, these all come in rechargeable and non-rechargeable versions. Next slide, please. So where we are as of just a couple days ago, the slide is still up to date. I try to look at this on a daily basis. most of the states that are active in legislation usually conclude their legislative sessions by no later than the end of June. There are a handful of states like Pennsylvania, New Jersey, to some extent California, that are still active and will go through the end of the year. So the way to look at this is the universe of all the different battery legislation that took place prior to the end of 20, where we are today in 2025. For portable batteries, so again, those, and I'm gonna lump medium in with portable. So the small and medium format batteries are covered
Mark?
under, yes.
Can you just wait 1 second?
Having
I
some technical difficulties.
lost our screen here,
Oh, I'm sorry.
just so we want to make sure. Yeah, okay, now we're back up. Sorry about that.
Okay. So the portable, so the small and medium format batteries that the model bill that I'm talking about covers, those are going to be covered by the red and the yellow states. The red states have laws that are enacted either this year or in previous years. The yellow states are the ones that were active this year on small and medium format battery legislation. If they have some the black lines, the hexing through them, those states have ended this year without passing a bill. We would fully expect to see those states be active again next year. Some we already know will, some we're still waiting on, but we would expect that all of those would be active in some way. Moving over then to the green represents the electric vehicles. So you can see California is still active on, with their California 615 Senate bill. All the other states did not pass something this year. And then there's one little blue in New Jersey, where New Jersey passed an EV battery collection bill at the beginning of 2024. So this represents the universe of batteries that we have. And you'll see there are some states that have multiple colors because they're involved in 2 or more of the activities right now. And next slide, please. And then this is just looking at it with the electric vehicles removed. So this would just be based on what the model bill that I'm talking about focuses on, the small and medium format batteries, or what we're calling together portable batteries. This just looks at those together without the EVs on there. And next slide. So that's the state activities that we have as of right now. The U.S., the federal government through the Environmental Protection Agency is also very active right now. The graphic on the right comes right from the EPA website. They have they've been looking at this. They started face-to-face meetings and virtual meetings in the spring of 2024. The deliverables they have on that graphic are actually at 11 o'clock and 5 o'clock. So the two opposing corners there that I have listed here. The first one is they're developing a set of voluntary labeling guidelines and are expected to publish that late this year or early next year. This would be something that would cover all battery types and sizes, and it has a number of deliverables that are there. That will also influence something that came about a little later, I would say about midway or roughly 8 to 10 months ago, that the EPA is looking at a national framework. So if you remember the slides that I was just presenting with all the state activity, EPA is a little bit late to the game in some cases on this, because there are obviously a fair number of states that already have legislation active, and that is not a criticism of EPA. They've been a great partner in this. But they are looking at something of a national framework. The model bill that I'll be talking about is definitely considered as part of that. The timing is unknown yet. I would guess, based on what I'm seeing, that it'll be maybe mid to late 2026, but don't hold me to that. The deliverables on that would be to create a national framework and then report that to Congress. That framework could then also be used by states should they choose to use it. And then any decision that would come out of that model framework, if they were to look at doing something at a federal level for battery legislation, that would be at the discretion of Congress. So would just publish some guidance or recommendations, and then ultimately anything that could or would happen would be at the call of Congress. So next slide. So with the model bill that we have, I'm boiling it down greatly here. The model bill is about 20 pages long, gets into a lot of different detail, but it does have some very key components. First and foremost is state oversight. There are some provisions that we have that I'll talk about here a little further down that make it very important to have state oversight. One of those being the antitrust protection in particular, and the right of private action. And I'll cover those momentarily. So state oversight is very important to us to make sure that the state has the ability to look at plans and then look at annual reports and provide comments based on that. The model bill is true EPR. It's producer financed. There is no fee at the point of sale or collection for the products. It does require, in this case, a stewardship organization to model or to manage the hundreds of different producers. So because this covers the loose batteries and the batteries that are included that are easily removable in devices, when you think of all the different brands of products and batteries that are out there, we expect, because we see it in some of the other states that are going through programs now, there will be 300, 400, 500 plus different producers that are named. So the best way to manage that complexity is to have a stewardship organization as a go through there. I mentioned the limited antitrust protection. This is just something that when you're dealing with, when you have competitors that are dealing with a program that is ultimately going to assess fees to the manufacturers, it makes the hair on the back of our necks stand up as manufacturers to have those kind of conversations. So the limited antitrust protection just gives the producers the ability to have conversations that is only limited towards developing a program for collection and recycling. So it just gives that level of protection that we feel that we need to be able to have those conversations. Right of private action is something that hasn't been used as of yet in other areas, but it is a protection that if a state chooses not to enforce the law, this gives the stewardship organization the ability to pursue free riders civilly in civil court, so that if you have a producer that is not paying their fair share for a program and their products end up in it, this gives that stewardship organization the ability, if the state is not enforcing it, to enforce the law. Small battery labeling exceptions. In some early versions of the model that we had, this was left out. And when you have communication in the form of logos or arrows or guidance for collection and recycling, we support that. But when you have a product that is a button cell, for example, that fits in your watch or wearable device, it becomes very difficult to place that on some of these tiny products. So the exception basically says that can go on the label or the communication information as opposed to actually on the product. It does have items in here for where the recycled materials would go with metrics around that, as far as recycling efficiency metrics, and making sure that best practices are followed so that these materials do end up in the best option possible for those products. In many cases, that may be back into batteries, or it may be back into, say, a metal supply chain, so that they can be used in an appropriate closed loop or nearly closed loop fashion. The bill does have some retailer obligation, but those obligations are mostly limited to the retailers making sure the products that they're selling are listed on a website and that are compliant with the rules. Retailers are not forced to be collection points, but they do have the option to opt in to become a collection point in this case. And then, of course, there's education and training is a big component of the plan that goes into place, as well as the annual report, to make sure that when you're dealing with the products, you want to make sure that the consumers know where to take them and how to do it. And then, of course, those that are managing those products at their end of life can do that effectively and most importantly, safely. So next slide. If Scott Cassell is in the room, I threw this slide up there just hoping he would remember this. This is just when we talk about the complexity of a collection program. This was something that we had a summit now nearly 15 years ago, and we had an artist in the room that was drawing this based on the conversations we were having. It's a little bit dated, but not completely. But it just talks about like when you look at all the different ways products can be, if you look on the left side, how they're collected, how they're stored, how they're sorted, how they're processed, and where they go to at the end of that. I love this graphic because it really boils a lot of it down at a 10,000-foot level, but it does give a lot of the different complexity that's involved, but it shows in one snapshot the entire picture to some extent here. So hopefully Scott enjoyed that if he's there. Next slide, please. How batteries are collected. Generally speaking, these would be through municipal drop-offs, such as, but not excluding others. These would be libraries, fire stations, government offices, obviously police stations, etc. Household waste collection. I mentioned the retail take back. It is voluntary, but we know that we do have a lot of retailers that do opt in right away. So retail take back is a component of this. And then certainly other businesses have the ability to opt in to receive collection boxes, bins, or however they're collected. Next slide, please. How they're recycled. So you get the spent batteries that are commingled together. They go through a sorting operation. Obviously, the picture I show here is what we would call manual sorting. There are sorters that also do some level of automated sorting, and certainly there are some that do both, where they may do an initial automated sort and then have a manual sort after. There are three different ways that main ways that batteries can be recycled: heat-based, chemical-based, and mechanically based. In most cases, most of these batteries will actually see two or more of these in their recycling. So for example, there may be some level of mechanical separation before it goes into a heat or chemical-based process. So generally speaking, you will see, like I said, two or more of those. And then ultimately what you end up is a usable material. The picture I show here, for some that are have heard the term before, that is what we call black mass. So that is a refined version of the active materials in the battery in a usable form that then can go back into the different metals industries and be used again. Next slide, please. So as far as where we are in other states right now, most of these states, I'm calling DC a state here, just to make it easier. Most of the states have not started yet, but I do show here when the different plans are due, and of course when the law begins. And then I also included in here the retail sale prohibition, because the dates may sometimes be slightly delayed from when the law begins. So you can see that the District of Columbia is in effect now. And then Vermont and Illinois are the ones that start essentially here. The plans are due. Vermont's is already due, and Illinois, excuse me, and Washington State. So those plans are now submitted, and then the laws begin either the beginning of next year in the case of Vermont and Illinois, and then Washington State is 1 year delayed. And then Connecticut, Nebraska, and Colorado just passed their bills this year, so they're slightly delayed. And California has been involved in rulemaking, so the star just represents our best guess right now as to where they are. So next slide. Metrics of success, as I mentioned, and I will always start with this: safety for people, property, and the environment. That is first and foremost. We have to make sure that we're doing this. Batteries are energetic products, and I'm sure you all see in the news all the different issues that are happening. So when you start having batteries coming back in reverse logistics, we need to make sure that is done as safely as possible. Obviously, awareness from consumers and users of the products is a big portion of this. If consumers don't know what to do with the products at end of life, that's a problem. The accessibility and convenience then is also important. We want to make sure that it is simple for consumers, that when they are thinking of, okay, what do I do with this? It is front of mind for them and it is convenient. And then we want to make sure that we do have effective downstream processing and recycling, and that recycling is done according to best practices, and that those materials that are recovered are used as smartly and effectively as possible. And then, as I mentioned too, we want to make sure the program is as harmonized with the other states as best we can, because then it makes it just easier for all the different states, for all the processors, the stewardship organizations. And we all travel to different states from time to time. It makes it easy if we know what we're doing in one state and it's the same in another. So next slide. I'll be close to conclusion with this. I just mentioned this. I mean, we all see this in the news. These are the different incidents. Some of the products that are going to be coming back in, particularly the lithium-based products, are considered dangerous for transportation. But that is for not just when they're unused or new, it is also when they're spent or a waste product or seeing a second life. So we are seeing a number of incidents at all stages, whether they're inbound, whether they're being processed for recycling, or whether they're being transported or even just used on an airplane, for example. There are a lot of considerations that have to be followed in the different regulations for the use of those, for things like terminal protection to make sure that they don't short circuit, for containment if there is an incident, and then of course packaging and labeling of those products. This is an important portion of a stewardship organization program. A properly designed stewardship plan does account for and has a lot of experience with all these different issues and how to prevent them. So that is a big component of the stewardship plans that are put together, and it needs to be of paramount importance so that we don't see these types of images in our daily lives. So next slide. And thank you for your time. I obviously welcome questions now and at any point in the future. Thank you.
Do we want to go to the fire marshal and then circle back with questions, or do you think we should do the questions?
I think we have John Fisher's presentation next,
Okay,
and then
yeah.
fire marshal.
I'm gonna provide John's piece to this, and then we'll get to fire marshal.
Okay, all right.
Marshal.
So I think we'll hold off on questions till we get through these next two presentations.
So we just wanted to summarize some of the existing infrastructure that's going on in Massachusetts, relative to this topic. Looking through the reported data that municipalities submit to us, not all of them, but a good number of them. We found that there's 269 municipalities collecting lithium batteries now, from their residents. We also have, as you may know, this Beyond the Bin, which is a place where you can look for various outlets, which include retail outlets, but also include municipal. There's 337 battery collection locations listed on that site currently. That probably certainly isn't like capturing all of the retail component that might be out there, because it's something that people can opt into list on the system. We have just one town that's reported collecting more than 1,600 pounds in a year, which is a sizable amount of material. I want to make sure this is all preface it all saying this municipally reported data, so we have not actually confirmed every one of these statistics that I'm covering here. One of the main things that we're running into, this goes across the department, not just at our recycling or solid waste group, but our emergency response people, is what we're doing, what the options are for damaged and defective recall batteries. They pose a significant increased cost burden from what we've seen. Our contract price to manage those is significant and difficult. The cost from the vendors that we've seen out there is anywhere from $99 to $5 a pound. Obviously, the cost for a damaged or defective recall battery is significantly higher. So that's another issue. Next slide. these, these materials are gonna be regulated as a hazardous waste under and likely under the universal waste rule, so. It does make recycling, of those facilities that want to site and get permitted to recycle the material a little bit easier if they're handled as universal waste. We have seen widespread fires at solid waste and recycling facilities over the really probably over the past, I would say 10 years, but it's really gotten a lot more active, and I think that has to do with all the batteries that are now out there. So we have significant worker safety risks at the solid waste facilities. Can cause major facility damage, and result in extended facility downtime, which is, from Massachusetts perspective, we have very tight management capacity system, and losing any of the facilities for any length of time can be a real problem. We are working with all the facilities to install fire monitoring and suppression systems, and trying to get them into the most state of the art of those systems, and they're obviously interested in doing that themselves. But there are still just the continued, risks associated with these batteries winding up at solid waste and recycling facilities. Next, I don't think I have any more slides. That's it.
All right, that's a good segue. We have State Fire Marshal John Devine with us this morning to talk about some of the fire risks presented by these products. Thank you for joining us, Fire Marshal Devine.
Hi, good morning, folks. And I just want to take a moment and just thank you for the opportunity to speak today about the issue of, that your firefighters throughout the Commonwealth are seeing with the lithium ion batteries and kind of the emerging hazard they present. So first up, I just want to be clear that these batteries are safe and appropriate for consumer use in overwhelmingly most of the cases. Like alkaline batteries, they're in hundreds of devices we depend on every day. But unlike the alkaline batteries, they fail rapidly and violently, and sometimes with catastrophic results. They release toxic and flammable gases, and they can explode and ignite nearby combustibles. And when the larger battery packs go into thermal runaway, they can almost be impossible for your firefighters to extinguish. By developing a tool for Massachusetts fire investigators, we here at the Department of Fire Services have been able to gather much better data on these lithium ion battery fires than we ever did before. Back in November of 2023, let me back up a second. So we have a national incident reporting system. So every time your local fire department responds to a call for service, they write a fire report that is submitted to us at the state level, and that it's also put into a national fire incident reporting system database at the national level. Now that database is right now probably 42 years old at the federal level. And when the folks write these reports, there is no code in there for a lithium ion battery fire. So that was one of my first initiatives when I took over as fire marshal back in almost 2 years ago in July of 2023. We just had no data. We knew, I knew from my previous life as a fire chief in Northampton, the last 4 fires I had before I left the city were lithium ion battery fires. So I knew, and, talking to other fire chiefs, that we had an issue in the state, but we just had no data to prove it. So one of the things we did at the Department of Fire Services was create a lithium ion battery checklist form for these types of fires. And it's available on our website at the Department of Fire Services website. So if a local department responds to one of these fires, they go in, they can click on the link on the website, they fill out the form, hit submit, and it comes back to us at the state level. So we're finally getting some decent data back. And we've been able to gather some very good data, and it paints a pretty good picture. So lithium ion battery fires occur much more often than we previously believed, obviously. We've had at least 135 in Massachusetts last year alone, and about 3 dozen injuries to firefighters and civilians have been reported since late 2023. And because this tool, it's voluntary, we don't require your fire departments to go in and fill out this form. I'm sure I still have fire departments out there that just forget about it or just don't do it. So I'm sure that number is probably higher than the one we actually have. But moreover, these numbers don't include a rising number of fires in trash disposal vehicles and transfer stations that some experts believe is driven by large numbers of improperly discarded batteries. The exact cause of these fires can be almost impossible to determine, as you can imagine. You know, in a trash truck, there's everything in those things. So they're very hard to investigate and determine. But they are consistent with what you'd see when you crush, puncture, or otherwise damage a consumer grade lithium ion battery. So the bottom line is these batteries grow in usage. The number of associated fires is growing too. And policy needs to keep pace with the hazard. So we're really dealing with four major sets of batteries. Your personal devices, right? Your cell phones, portable chargers, laptops, stuff like that. Your micro mobility devices, your hoverboards, your e-bikes, your e-scooters, and the electrical vehicles, obviously, and then our energy storage systems, house batteries, industrial batteries, and then your grid level systems. When we look at the equipment involved in lithium ion batteries, fires, we see some patterns. So micro mobility devices such as e-bikes and scooters were the most commonly ones that were involved in fires. They account for nearly 20% of the total fires. You know, and this is troubling because these battery packs are much larger than those in the cell phones, tablets, and laptops, and they're also more likely to be stored near doorways and stairways that residents would use as an escape route if there was a fire. And it's also where your firefighters would most likely make entry into that building to extinguish the fire. You know, as we look to the future of lithium ion battery policy in Massachusetts, I would like to make two suggestions. First, we need to maintain and improve the public's awareness of safe storage, use, charging, and disposal of lithium ion batteries. We at the Department of Fire Services have been aggressive with leveraging news and social media with these messages, but ideally they should come from all the stakeholders, including real retailers, distributors, waste management companies, and our partners in local and state government. Second, we should explore the possibility of better isolating and recycling these batteries when the consumer is done using them. Lithium ion batteries can be safely disposed of, but currently that process is time consuming and inconvenient. You can buy a number of lithium ion battery products quickly and easily online, as we all know. We need to make it just as easy for folks to recycle those too. Isolation bins for residential buildings, commercial facilities, and drop-off centers could make it easier for consumers to discard their batteries in a way that won't lead to a trash fire, so long as the appropriate fire protection measures are in place and the personnel who work with them are well trained in the hazards and how to mitigate those hazards. And finally, again, I would just like to thank everyone for the opportunity to speak and kind of give you an update of what we've done here at the Department of Fire Services and what your local firefighters are seeing out there with these lithium ion battery fires. And I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Fire Marshal. That's really helpful perspective for this group. So I'll open it up. What we're doing now is just clarifying questions for the presenters. Just a reminder, there's going to be room for further discussion going forward. This is just based upon the presentations you've heard, whether you have any clarifying questions. So anyone have anything for?
I have a question.
Yeah.
And I think it was the third to last slide in Mark's presentation.
Okay.
About metrics, I think it was called. I was just wondering. Yes, exactly. Who, let's see, how do I formulate the question? Who's responsible for this? How does it get done? How does it get evaluated? Like, is this just the concept of what we need, or is this, like, I just wanted to hear more about this stuff.
Is this for the awareness, or so we would file a plan with the state, and then the state would have the opportunity to provide comments on that plan as far as what works best for the state.
And so how, just for example, like awareness, what is a measurement of that? Like, how do we know that the public is aware of the law and understands what to do?
Yeah, the stewardship does work in the background where they do surveys. Essentially, I mean, I'm greatly simplifying it here, but they'll do surveys with consumers, businesses, etc., and just ask them the question, or if they're aware of this program and that it exists. and where if they know where to drop batteries off.
Thank you.
Yes.
Also on one of Mark's slides, I'm not, maybe a couple back from this one. When he was talking, keep going, sorry. Right there. So when, Mark, you were describing these different collection opportunities, it was voiced as household waste collection for the second red bullet, but it's actually household hazardous waste collection, which is a really
Sorry.
important distinction that I just wanted to offer clarity for the group because it's just very different.
Yeah, my apologies. It is household hazardous waste collection. It's not meant to be like a curbside program.
An additional clarifying question for you, Mark. I think this actually was asked in the comments as well, but you identified that there were studies being done on embedded batteries and that those studies would be completed. I believe that would be July 2027. Is that correct?
Yeah, I just saw Peg's comment in the chat room and just answered it. It is 2027. If I said 2017, which obviously I apparently did, I apologize.
Perfect. No, just wanted to be sure. Thank you.
Any further clarifying questions for the presenters?
I have one question on the, current, the municipalities reporting on currently, doing the local program. Do you have a sense of how, I think, it varies across municipalities, or are they drop-off programs and how those work?
Yeah, they're gonna be predominantly drop-off programs that might be at the, if there's a drop-off program for trash and recycling, that they'll may say to somebody going there.
At like the DPW.
But, yeah, or at the transfer station, the town transfer station, but they also can collect them at other locations and with their call to recycle box that they may ask for. It could be a Board of Health, or it could be something like that. So but I would say predominantly those 268 are gonna be municipally drop-off programs.
I had another question for Mark, is on the first slide, it said this was an all battery recommendation, but does that include alkaline or single use batteries, or is this just focused on rechargeables?
I'm sorry, can you know?
Oh, I'm Ally Gloves, I'm a consultant that works on batteries.
Okay, we actually have comments from the public in the next slides.
Yeah, sorry, I should have been clear. The clarifying questions are limited to commission members. We're gonna have a public comment after the facilitated discussion. Thank you.
I
So,
do have one other. Go ahead.
For the question though, I think it was just asking, does all batteries represent alkaline too? The answer is yes.
Yeah, one other question for Fire Marshal Devine. Just a little bit curious here about the micro mobility devices and the percentage of fires there. Are these spontaneous? Is there a sense from the data that you've collected if this is due to mismanagement or some sort of potential defect, or just to the causes of those fires?
So I think what we've been seeing, I think with the most of the causes has been improper charging.
Okay.
Using an aftermarket charger that wasn't designed for that device. And that's been a big problem for us. And I just want to add one more thing. As I spoke about the National Fire Incident Reporting System being 42 years old, the federal government is in the process. They've created a new system called NERIS, the National Emergency Reporting Incident System. And the new NERIS system will have a complete battery, a lithium-ion battery fire module in there. So I am hoping, and I know we will get much better data because, when the firefighters go in to write their report, they'll actually have a module in that report where they're going to start collecting, what type of battery was it? Who was the manufacturer? All this stuff that will have much better data. And we've onboarded a few of the departments throughout the Commonwealth already. And then the majority of your fire departments are going to be onboarded in October, with the goal of having everybody on the new national system in January of 2026. So hopefully, next year, by mid-year, this time next year, we should have much more accurate data.
Thank you.
A follow-up question on that. Commissioner, how, fire marshal, the fires that start with the improper charging I get, but the fires that then occur at the waste transfer facility or, the town dump, like, so there's just a bucket full of these batteries and how do those fires start?
Most of the fires in your trash recycling facilities are starting, they're getting crushed, they're getting damaged by machinery, they're getting damaged by heavy equipment, and they're getting crushed or punctured and igniting combustibles around them.
Thank you.
Any other clarifying questions for the presenters? Okay, I think we're gonna move to facilitated discussion.
What do you do for a while?
Oh, a bio break, that's good, that's welcome news.
You music.
Back in a bit.
And we're gonna take a 10-minute break.
It is, what time? I don't know what time it is.
We ready? Time? All right, I think we'll get going. So our next, the next phase here is the facilitated discussion. We've got some questions up on the board. The first one for discussion, do we think that the proposed PRBA program would work in Massachusetts? Anyone have any thoughts on that? Yes.
I believe that the proposed PRBA program would work in Massachusetts. It would enhance the collection network, make a more cohesive system than the patchwork that exists right now. Have educational requirements that would be uniformly executed across the state, which is not something that we have right now. And certainly there is a cost element for some municipalities that are collecting batteries, and that cost element would be eliminated. In context, it's certainly not the same level of cost as like a mattress program or even handling paint. I believe the amounts would be much less, but it is still a cost that is being borne by taxpayers currently that this program would eliminate.
Thank you. Anyone else have thoughts on the first question?
Yeah, Louis raised his hand.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah, thanks. Good, NWRA completely supports the PRBA program. We think it'd be a great idea for Massachusetts. This is battery safety is our number one issue right now, and NWRA and RRS a couple years ago put together a report that estimates 5,000 battery fires are taking place a year in MRFs, and we just believe this is something that needs to be addressed this year. It's very, very important.
thank you.
Yep.
Any other thoughts, commission members? Yes, Mr. Rennie?
I just want to recognize and appreciate the fact that it is, the true EPR model. And it's not consumer finance. I think that some of the legislation that I've seen specifically prohibits a charge point of sale, and I think that is one.
Great, thank you. Yes.
I would just echo, I think, Lou said it, but having from Casella, we absolutely see the risk of fires from batteries in our facility every day. And the trucks I was just showing, just a couple weeks ago, we had a truck fire. Attributed to work combined batteries, so it is a very real and present risk. I don't think there's any other way to effectively tackle this. The product is widespread, it's prevalent, people genuinely don't know what to do with them. If some of the recommendations out there publicly right now are to put them in the trash, or we're trying to bring that, but we need to not just say, no, you can't put them in the trash, or you can't, then we need to be able to say, yes, this is where you take it. And I think that's what would be accomplished through this program.
Great, thank you. Councilor Delgado?
Thank you. I echo many of the sentiments. I definitely have learned a lot just from the presentations and hearing a lot about just the EV battery fires, but also seeing it from the perspective of the batteries. I mean, this, I think, out of many of the topics that we're looking at, I mean, from the safety perspective, I think this one, is definitely one that we should be looking into. I guess I do have a question because I know it's with some of the topics that we've discussed, there's always some pushback or I don't want to say cons, but and I'm just curious to know, are there any specific pushbacks that we've seen from other states, I guess, that we should also understand? I always like to look at all sides of an issue before I I push for it, but this one so far seems like a no-brainer. So I don't know if there's anybody that can answer that last piece.
Mark, do you have a sense of any issues that have been encountered in other jurisdictions?
You're on mute.
You're mute.
Apologies for that. I thought when I swung my mic boom down, it would unmute it, but it didn't. I see a hand raised that will probably get into one of the concerns that has come up in other states from Mr. Zotos. I'll preface that just by saying that, and I'll let him speak for himself. We have been talking with Redwood and actually had a conversation yesterday, so we'll continue that dialogue. But I'll let Daniel speak for himself.
Hey,
During public comment.
Yeah, this is, I should have made this clear as well. The facilitate discussions for commission members were, next sequence is the public comment period. So we'll hold off on any non-commission perspectives at this point. Any other commissioners?
I'd like to address Councilor Delgado's concerns.
Yep.
Juanita Traber, Master Cycle, sorry, I always forget to say that. So it was touched on in Mark's presentation about some of the exemptions for this law. So one of the biggest areas, I would say, of concern, or what doesn't get addressed by the program as presented, is embedded batteries. So it is a major concern for municipal governments, for the waste industry, because this program would still not, it doesn't solve the problem 100%. It would dramatically improve things from where they are right now. But if you have a rechargeable razor at home that, you know, stops working, then you still, as a consumer, have to figure out what the appropriate thing to do with that is. And from a municipal point of view, we would still need to educate consumers, you know, the public, about what to do with that item. And it could still be mishandled because it's not included within this program. So that is, and Mark alluded to this, it's a big topic of conversation that's happening across the country. Previous bills that have been passed had study components to them to study the embedded battery issue. And so there's discussion happening on how to find solutions for that, but right now that is exempt from the PRBA program as presented today.
Thank you for that, Juanita. Yeah, I think, I agree with the education piece, since, different from paint or mattresses. We're dealing with this on a daily basis in terms of household usage. So I think the public awareness education is definitely important. So thank you.
Andreas, again, we're in facilitate discussion with commission members. So if you could hold off until the public portion of this. So he's not here on behalf of somebody. Okay, sometimes people have substitutes, so it's hard to keep track, but Sharon Kishida?
Yes, thank you. Sharon Kishida, Commission Member, Mass Product Stewardship Council. I'm thinking this is probably more of a rhetorical question, and maybe Representative Barber is in the room. But as the legislation is currently written, and as we all know, we have a 2-year legislative session. Should this pass, this bill, this law would then be implemented in January of 2028 and rolled out in July of 2028, which, think about it, that is 3 years from now. I think we have heard, and I think we'll continue to hear, the urgency and the need for passage of this bill. I know there are changes, really positive changes that are happening in our legislature. It's really great news. If somehow, and this is the purpose of this commission, is to really motivate our legislators to get this one moving as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think I'm going to lump that into the next category with a concern. So that's one concern we've heard, is that at present, the proposed legislation would take too long to go into effect. So I note that, and I think that's something we can talk about further. So let's move to the next question. In addition to the concern just raised by Ms. Kishida, any other concerns about the proposed approach? And again, that's limited to a proposed bill, not the PRBA presentation, but are there any other concerns that folks have about the approach that's been outlined for us that have been undertaken in other states? Yes.
I would like to raise the issue of recalled batteries, which is also one of the exemptions. There has been discussion among local government officials, local and state government officials in states that have either passed this legislation or are looking to pass it, that have identified that a lot of battery recall notices describe the process to the consumer of what to do with the battery that is being recalled, and it is very typically, I believe one person in the state of Washington looked into this and found that like 8 out of 9 battery recalls were directing consumers to take those batteries to their household hazardous waste programs. And so right now, recalled batteries are exempt. But I would probably like to see that changed to be included within the program so that the responsibility does not fall on local governments to manage batteries that should be even greater concern to the program. I can speak from personal experience that right after that conversation was happening within the last 2 weeks, I actually got a notice from Amazon for a device that I purchased 3 years ago that has now been recalled. And I got that exact notice that said, take it to your household hazardous waste or contact your municipality or your local household hazardous waste program. And I was like, why don't we get a say if that is what's being advised? So it was just it's an interesting kind of evolution of what the conversation that's happening about the development of these programs.
Yes.
This is, and I saw the comment from Scott, he wonders if anyone read his document, I just wanna reassure him that we did, or I
did too.
One thing, I'm used to reading Scott's documents, and so I look for the word eco-modulation. I wanna see, is there anything, in the fee structure that's gonna encourage producers to design more responsibly, design for recycling, design for proper management? I didn't see any discussion of that, and other than I haven't got the bills yet, so I don't, maybe it's in there, but I wonder, is that an element of these programs, or has that not?
Mark, do you have a?
Yeah, I was trying to,
thought on
I was trying to raise my hand, but didn't do it quick enough. It is not currently in the model legislation. Eco-modulation is something that's extremely complicated to manage because what you get into is what exactly is it? You know, is it that you use renewable energy or you use recycled content, and then who tracks it, who polices it, who makes decisions on winners or losers? And right now there is not really a standardized approach to doing that. So it's just complicated, and I know like the French government has actually had eco-modulation in their imposed or their transposed regulations from the battery directive going back now more than 10 years, and they haven't even figured out completely how to do it yet. It's in their law, but they don't do it right now because they can't figure out how to do it. So, I mean, it's something that's definitely a talking point that happens behind the scenes about how that can be done, but it's just not something that's really come to a standardized approach just yet.
But I think for me, you know, obviously when it's legal and recycled content as much as an actress, and I think in this context, it's about the safety, so. Are there certain design elements that the fee structure would encourage that would, you know, make the battery removable, make it very clear what the consumer should do with it? I would love to see something in that regard, because I think, like we're speaking before, we're always at the end of the pipe, we get the notice, we don't get much say, I mean, the promise and potential of EPR is to influence the designs, so.
So the product, so you go back to product design it in a way that it would make it easier to manage at the end of life.
That the fee structure would
The
get
fee
set up,
structure
yeah,
would be set up in a way to
to
encourage
incentivize,
the
yeah.
producers to, okay,
Yeah.
interesting. Any other concerns?
Scott has,
What's that?
Scott has.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. Well, I guess he's our consultant. Yeah, you can go. You get it back.
I'm just weighing in on a few of the comments here, perhaps to add. So Scott Cassell, Product Stewardship Institute here. In terms of the fee structure, and Mark, you may be able to address this, or maybe Karen Stewart from Call to Recycle, but like not every battery is treated the same way internally from Call to Recycle, or those who are processing these batteries. They cost something different per battery. So when we use the term eco-modulation, we often refer to overall cost structure. So if there's, a large battery versus a small battery, or different types of batteries, or different chemistries of the batteries, I believe, and again, Mark, please chime in, that the industry, through the producer responsibility organization Call to Recycle, is assigning the cost in a certain way. So they're already doing this to a certain degree. So the concept is consistent with the way the industry does business now. What I want to add, the eco part, is, as Mark was saying, the environmental impacts. So it's not only the cost to the system, which is the first piece, but the environmental impacts. And that is more complicated in terms of doing a life cycle assessment, figuring out greenhouse gas impacts, and various other elements. I think that this is a great topic for continued discussion. But I did want to say that there are ways to look at cost that the industry is using now. Second thing on the exemptions, I just wanted to comment that all exemptions should be considered a free rider. They are a free rider. So anyone that's not paying into the system now, that it comes into the system anyway, is a free rider. And that's of interest to everybody. I think that the companies pay their own fair share. So when Juanita was mentioning the recalled batteries, that's a good example. If they are exempted from the bill, but they still come to the household hazardous waste centers and they still need to pay for it, the companies that are putting into the system those batteries that need to be recalled are not paying their fair share into the system. So that's something of concern to all of us. Thank you.
Just so I'm clear on that, if this is set up in the way it's been set up elsewhere, wouldn't the manufacturer of those recalled batteries, wouldn't they have already paid in? I mean, they don't know that in advance it's gonna be recalled. I guess that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, well, that is a good question. For Mark, if it is a free rider, or is it apportioned by the market share for the companies already paying into the system?
So there is a provision in the model that does talk about recalled batteries. If they do end up in the program, that the stewardship organization can seek compensation from them. The way that a recall is supposed to work is that, because recalls are intensive, that the organization that is issuing the recall is supposed to have communications, and then obviously all the background materials, packaging, et cetera, that's required to be able to manage those batteries. One of the big things is there's a different training component that's required for damaged, defective, and recalled batteries. So like if you have a retail component or even a municipal component, there's a certain level of training that everyone that touches those batteries has to have. It is a reduced version of complete dangerous goods training, because there's recognition from the Department of Transportation that we're not going to be training someone that is, operating a kiosk at a retail location to be fully dangerous goods trained. But they don't give exemptions on that for the damaged, defective, and recalled batteries. So it's like I said, there is a provision in the bill to seek that compensation. But ultimately, and like I said, the batteries can go through the same stewardship organizations that are managing a program, but that cost then is just easier if it's done at the front end versus the back end.
Okay, any other concerns? Yes?
Thinking of more, so on the metrics of success piece, on some of the other programs like Massachusetts, we talked a fair amount about recycling percentage targets. We want to get 80%, 90%, whatever of what's generated in the state, and I didn't see that in the list, on the batteries, and maybe that's just because I think the documents that were at like 12% nationwide now is probably quite low. But I guess if the goal is the protection and safety of people involved in collecting waste and recycling, that's a big part of the driver here, then I think we really need to have ambitious and robust targets for covering a significant percentage of what's out there.
That's a good point. Mark, is there any, have other states looked at percentages as a means of measuring success?
It does get talked about. We tend to focus more on the convenience metrics because and the accessibility and the convenience metrics and the awareness, because there's a certain portion of the population that will do it, others will seek it out, others won't. So we try to make it convenient. You know, but there is a provision in the program or the plan that is filed. The plan has to have targets in it for what they think that they're going to get and how they can improve that. So it is in there, but it's not necessarily there's not hard targets that are listed in the model as far as like a target by this date or a new target by a second date or third date.
Thank you.
I had one question. Mark, you mentioned the model bill's right of private action, and I was wondering if you could just expand a little bit on what that's looked like or what you imagine that looking like. I mean, is this something that we really anticipate a lot of problems with free riders to the extent the product stewardship organization would regularly be pursuing these actions?
Yeah, as I mentioned, it's not something that's been used to this point. It's something that's reserved if you ended up with, I mean, there's always going to be free riders, and it's the law of diminishing returns. If you're pursuing someone that's only putting maybe 1,000 batteries on the market, it's not worth it pursuing. But if you had a major player that was flooding the market with product and was not paying their fair share, obviously we default to the state to enforce. I mean, the state has certainly the ability to do that, and that's you know, that's why it's a law. This is just in the case where if you had a major player that was not, the stewardship organization then could pursue them in civil court to seek compensation to pay their fair share for the products. And but like I said, it's not something that the stewardship organizations want to do or have done in the past. It's just it's like a in case of emergency break glass card, if you will.
Thank you.
Any other concerns? Okay, so let's go to whether or not we've heard some.
One follow-up question, Bill Ryan, Retail Association. So we don't have metrics on the success in the programs in other states, or kind of percentages of what they're actually collecting.
Mark, do we have metrics?
So the other states have the convenience and the awareness targets, but do not have specific dates in there. But that is part of the plan. When the stewardship organization submits a plan, they will have a number in there that then the state will review. And obviously, ideas based on when the plan is filed and future dates for where they think they can and should be.
I'm not really a question on success. Like, I'm just curious about, well, like goals. Is it actually working? Like, how much are you actually collecting? So a state that's turned on a program, like, I just think this, you know, the consumer awareness piece is so important, like particularly for the small, you know, fit in your pocket batteries, you know, that I think a lot of people would just throw in trash. And I get the medium, I really call it the medium batteries, they're, you know, like an e-bike or the hoverboard things. You know, the larger ones, I think people would do tend more to recognize that, hey, maybe I shouldn't just throw this away. So I'm just curious in terms of, you know, how successful it's been in some of those other states.
Scott, did you have a?
Yeah, I could just weigh in here and say, since we work with all these states, I want to go back to our database. We can put something together and send that to you. We should be able to get something. I think it's a great question that Bill raises. You know, what's the performance? How is it doing? It is more difficult to, you know, to get to calculate all of this, but we should be able to come back with some numbers. So and we'll work with Mark and also Karen Stewart from Call to Recycle about this as well.
Mark, did you have any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, thank you for saving me finding the raise your hand button. So, I mean, I can talk about this from two different directions. One would be the states that I showed in my slides there are just in the process of beginning. So only the District of Columbia right now actually has the program running. The other states are at their planned submission points or prior to that right now. So we don't know exactly how they're running because they're not running completely yet. The other side of it is I can look to the European system that they have where the battery directive has been in place since 2006. Generally speaking, excuse me, the European Union 27 member states are divided in three parts where you'll see that there are some member states that exceed the current 45% target. Some are right at it and some are below. So it really depends. There's a lot of different reasons why. But so, I mean, we can look at Europe and say, you know, okay, Europe's been collecting batteries now for nearly 20 years under law. And, you know, you still have a third of the member states that are not at the collection target right now. And, you know, obviously there are collection points in Europe at everywhere you go. So that's just a snapshot. It's something to look at. It's just a data point that we have. But at least here in the US, it's hard to know just yet because the programs are not fully functional yet.
Thank you. Any other concerns? So I've heard a few other policy recommendations. One was whether or not recall batteries should be exempted. Another was whether or not the fee structure should perhaps encourage proper design. Another was, you know, kind of, let's not wait 3 years to do this. Let's make this happen a little sooner. Any other policy recommendations that this group would like to make? Yeah, cover it. So, Mr. Rennie had identified kind of the getting more information on success rates of state programs. Any other information that folks would like to see considering this? Yes.
I had a question. It's possible I missed this earlier, but I was looking at the case of notable program exemptions, which I know we're discussing whether there should be exemptions. What percentage of batteries, like in terms of market size, would that reflect? I just didn't have like that.
It's a good
That
question.
order of magnitude.
Yeah. Do we have a sense of that, Mark?
Well, I mean, some of the exemptions like the lead acid batteries, I wouldn't count because they already have a program. I mentioned in the case of the medical devices, the exemption on the consumers, if they were the consumer ones were exempted, that's about 8 to 10% of the batteries, and we're not advocating for that exemption for the consumer-based medical devices. For the non-consumer, it's very small. The consumers' numbers will far outweigh that. I mean, we're talking like, you know, 0.1% or something, probably even lower than that. Automotive batteries are a rounding error on a rounding error on top of that. So the exemptions really would cover far less than 1% of all the different batteries that are out there, assuming the consumer-based medical devices are included, because that's, as like I said, that's somewhere in that 8 to 10% range.
Yes.
I might have missed this on the reading too, but I was very focused on the front end of this whole program, but are there any limitations or do we have enough information about what then happens to the batteries once they're collected for recycling? I'm just thinking sometimes things get exported to places with lower regulations because we didn't really talk about that piece of it.
That's a good question. Mark, do you have a sense of what happens after?
So yeah, so I mean, certainly the stewardship organizations can speak to it even better than I can, but So the batteries do go through processing. Most of the stewardship organizations are based in North America, most of them in the US actually. Um, most stewardship organizations will have foreign options in the case that, you know, they have a disruption in processing capability or something like that. But today, most of those batteries are processed in the North American market. It makes it far easier from a transportation perspective, keeps the materials locally as best as possible too.
And in case of mattresses, with their, and the well, you know, there's a revenue stream. Covering valuable materials, they think I understand there's valuable materials and batteries as well. So there's a business model, I guess, around it. Is that fair to say?
I'm sorry, I didn't completely understand. So in the case of, there's definitely a business model for US processors. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they want the material and actively seek it out. So yeah, that helps fuel their recycling engines, if you will.
Thank you.
Follow-up question to that, Juanita Traber, Mass Recycle, is that true for all battery chemistries?
It's fairly consistent. Yeah, I mean, the processing, I mean, there may be a specialty chemical system or something like that that does not have local processing, but like when you look at the vast majority of the chemistries that are used, like a lithium ion, like an alkaline, et cetera, there's robust capability in the US market.
Any other information that folks would like to see? All right. Well, thanks everyone for your patience in the public. I think we are now at the portion where we can take some public comments. Just a reminder, please state your name and affiliation and try to keep your comments succinct. Take anyone. I think everyone in the room is either staff or commission members, so this would be online. Mr. Zotos.
Hey, good morning, commission members. Daniel Zotos with Redwood Materials. We're actually based out of Northern Nevada, but I myself am a Massachusetts native, coming to you live from Kingston, Massachusetts. Really appreciate today's discussion. Redwood Materials has a few thoughts on the proposed model. Appreciated Mark Bullish's comments earlier. We have been working pretty closely and at least conversing with PRBA on some of these proposals lately. We also work with a number of PRBA's members in terms of direct partnerships with battery recycling. A few things that I'd like to level set on in terms of this important work is there is a brand new and ascendant advanced battery recycling industry here in the United States that is just getting off the ground. A lot of work recently went into sort of stimulating this downstream processing work, you know, in the Inflation Reduction Act, in terms of certain federal policy maneuvers. My company in particular right now holds the outsized market share for all lithium ion battery recycling in North America. Upwards of 70% of all lithium ion batteries actually end up at our doors for processing and material recovery. So with these bills, we actually think EPR model is great for smaller format and consumer batteries. We recognize the problem. We see the fire safety concerns. We do a lot of work across fire safety and emergency response. What we'd love to see in a more cohesive Massachusetts effort would be an accounting for this downstream processing capability, as well as market participants like my company who outwardly and proactively try to get batteries from consumers, the public, and in partnership. So what I mean by that is some of these current proposals actually don't allow or wouldn't allow for independent collection outside of just a stewardship program. There's been a lot of work over the past year, not just for my company, but others in this space, a trade organization called REMA, or the Recycled Materials Association, that reflects a broader part of the value chain. So waste management companies, metal recycling companies, and battery recyclers who have made recommendations to this model to essentially allow an independent path for battery collection that can also supplement the proposed stewardship program as well. So I know there's probably a lot more to discuss, but we'd love to be able to express some of those concerns more clearly with this group, but also, really in support of a path here to increase collection rates. We think we could have this proposed stewardship model work robustly. We'd love to help support that with our own direct work to the public, where we offer take back battery drop off bins, direct mail program, and collection events. What we've seen with some of these proposals is it would actually limit some of the players who are able to accept or publicly collect batteries as well. So just a few
Thank you.
thoughts. Really appreciate the time.
I appreciate your input, and you'll see on the screen if you want to put in any written comments to further elucidate what you described to us. We would welcome written comments as well. Thank you. I believe next one is Andreas Heiss.
Yes, good morning. My name is Andreas Weiss. I'm with LKQ Corporation. We're the largest vehicle recycler in the United States. Last year, I can't give you an exact number, but we recycle close to 1 million vehicles a year and harvest their parts and resell them on the market. I just want to comment that I know that this discussion is focused more on small format batteries and not vehicle batteries. But I just wanted to, explain that, when we are looking at motor vehicle electric batteries, EPR has, really been pushed in multiple states across the country in the last year, and it hasn't really been with success. We don't support an EPR program for any vehicle batteries. There's already a stream. They are, they don't really end up in, let's say, trash bins or landfills as much as other batteries. It's a different animal. And, we're more on the assumption that there should be a stakeholder process for determining how these should be recycled. There's also a robust remanufacturing process, which we're part of. And some of the EPR regulations that have been put forth for these larger batteries have interfered with getting the best use out of these batteries. So I'm kind of new to this discussion here in Massachusetts, and I just wanted to make sure that the vehicle batteries are being looked at differently from the small format batteries, because they're a completely different animal.
Thank you. Mr. Ferrara.
Hi, I'm Andrew Ferrara. I work with Berkshire Environmental Action Team out in Pittsfield, Mass. We offer battery recycling through call to recycle boxes at our office to the community, so at cost to us, but free for community member drop-offs. And one thing that I just really want to echo from a comment made earlier is that embedded batteries are a really big issue. We see that with people trying to bring them to us and need to know what to do with. We also see that we do annual river cleanups and park cleanups. We see embedded battery devices all the time, especially vapes. Vapes are something that practically battery recyclers don't take, electronics recyclers don't take, in my experience. Hazardous waste disposal companies don't take them. And there's really no good or safe or correct solution out there. And that's something that really needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Goddard.
Morning, everyone. Phil Goddard, Town of Bourne, also part of the advisory group on the Mass Product Stewardship Council. We spent a lot of time this winter with the sponsors of the bills that are on the House, Rep. Hogan, and Senate, Senator Cream, on a bill that we felt gave some flexibility with multiple PROs that could be created. So we didn't want to prohibit, but the main thing I think we were looking for, to Mr. Zodos's comments, we've got a great recycler here, but you've got to report the information, be part of the system, have a plan. Let's see if we can bake this into a program that works for people that are doing the job already. So we try to have some flexibility, but we don't want folks that are outside the system and trying to have multiple different ways to get data. So I think that was part of the reasoning behind that. So I encourage Redwood working with PRBA. If you could let all of us know any way we can help in Massachusetts on that, keep us informed so we can work with the legislative teams that we work with, PSC and others, to learn and adapt to the best quality bill that we can get. Because we need all these locations. I work in a landfill. We had a fire 2 weeks ago with a battery, and we had 6 of them lying in the landfill, tipping working phase. And we're next to 15,000 acres of a military base, so we go up and, tinderbox out here. So a lot of reasons we want these out of the landfills and the transfer stations. So let's see if we can, adapt it. But I think there was some room in the legislation, and, Scott is the expert, Juanita, but we tried to be accommodating, but I think there's some tweaking we can do. So I look forward to those conversations. Thank you.
Thank you. Garrett Trierwell.
Hey everyone, Garrett Truweiler, Director of Public Affairs for Waste Management. Thank you so much for opening for comments from the public. It's been referenced a few times. I'll be super brief. Greg obviously mentioned in his comments the impacts that these batteries can have on waste and recycling facilities. And as a national company, this is an issue that we face very frequently. And in all the states that I deal with, battery EPR is one of the top priorities, as Lou from our trade association had mentioned. We've had a number of fires in New England over the past few years in New Hampshire that caused some pretty serious damage. I do just want to point out in Massachusetts, just a year ago, we had a 3-alarm fire at our Avon recycling facility. And it not only cost $3 million just in structural damage to repair. The facility was shut down for months, causing quite a bit of disturbance in the marketplace. And there's another $3 million in lost revenue as a result. So again, not to overdo it, but I just want to say again how important this is, and we certainly support all the efforts that are being done by this commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Anne Germain.
Hi, Anne Germain with the National Waste and Recycling Association. I work with my colleague Lou Dubuque, who's already spoken. So as Lou's already mentioned, NWA supports this bill. We think it will go a long way in helping to address a lot of the battery issues that we're experiencing at our facilities. Nonetheless, we recognize it's not the only solution, and that it's got to be a multi-pronged approach. To that end, NWA is going to be launching a national campaign with Woodsy the Owl. I don't know if you guys remember Woodsy. We're also going to, be working on the safety aspects and everything else for our facilities. Nonetheless, as everybody's already mentioned, it has to be addressed in this manner as well. The fires we're experiencing are an existential threat to our members. Lou's already mentioned the number of fires, but our insurance rates are skyrocketing. They've gone up between 10 and 100-fold over the past few years. And so this is something we absolutely need. Thank you.
Thank you. I remember the Woodsy Owl jingle, which was very catchy. Still stuck in my head.
This is Greg Cooper, I'm the director of hazardous solid waste, DEP. I guess one question I put to the commissioner, to anyone here, is like, does this coincide with a ban on the disposal of those types of batteries? Would that be something that would want to be considered?
Yeah. It's my understanding, and Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, it did look like that was a feature of the ones that you had described previously, correct?
Yes, it is in the model bill.
So that's something we would need to think about, whether or not we would have this coincide with a ban.
And
How
some
does that work in practice, Mark?
Well, again, with the US states, they're just getting started right now. And some states actually do not include it because the comment that gets made is they don't want to make criminals out of their constituents to some extent. So as far as how it works in practice, in areas that have it, it tends to be enforced more at an industrial or commercial level than it does at the average consumer level.
And where's the ban put in place? It looked to me like, is this a ban on disposal or a ban on sales? I thought it said retail sales.
It would be a prohibition on retail sales if you're not part of a program.
Got it.
And then it would be and then it's a ban on landfill disposal.
Okay, so the landfill disposal one's an easy one. It's the, yeah, so this would make it so you would need to join in order to be able to sell.
Correct.
So yeah, okay. Yes,
I can wait till the other, if I just wanted to be.
all right, I think, Bill, I think you got your hand up first.
Yes, just a quick follow-up. I forgot to mention in NWRA, several representatives here. I am the past president of the Southern New England chapter of the Solid Waste Association of North America, which represents mainly municipalities, over 10,000 members, in the parallel organization, if you will, to NWRA. And those organizations have partnered together on safety. The CEO, Amy Lestitian Burke, and Michael Hoffman from MDR have partnered on this issue, and they have submitted comments on these bills in support of it. And I'm also part of a national battery working group with SWANA. So you have another trade organization that's highly supportive of these efforts. Just wanted to get that out there too, so you know. Thanks.
Thank you. Daniel.
I'll make it quick. I just wanted to quickly respond publicly to Phil's offer. Phil, we'd love to work more closely with you on some recommendations, and then just better articulate one key pain point for industry here with this proposal. Is there's language in this bill that it blanketly requires any entity independent of a stewardship organization, if they collect batteries from the public, they must forfeit the batteries they collect to the stewardship organization. That's really the big pain point for advanced battery recyclers or others in this space who are fully subsidizing the collection of batteries because of their inherent value. That's why we've been showing up in more of an oppositional posture. We want to see a policy, we want to see a bill, but it's provisions like that that actually don't allow for the flexibility Phil mentioned. So we'd love to take Phil up on that. We have really good recommendations we've already submitted to the legislature. There has been an ongoing national working group on this in terms of REMA, metal recyclers, et cetera, that I mentioned. So I just wanted to articulate why and exactly where the pain point is for industry to be able to show up here, not instead of a stewardship program, but also alongside and possibly in coordination and support of. Really appreciate everyone's time, and thanks for calling on me as well.
Thank you.
Janet Dominance from MassDEP. I just going back a couple of comments to, I guess it's different if you're gonna ban the sale, but just in terms of the track record in Massachusetts of success in banning items from disposal. I think the most recent numbers, which may be from a few years ago, but probably aren't that much different. More than 40% of what goes to the trash in Massachusetts are materials that have long been banned by the DEP. Paper, cardboard, glass, metal, etc. So, which was one of the reasons I asked earlier about like, how do we measure awareness and how do we know if we're succeeding? Because my contention is it's a through line, starting with awareness, and then, we need to get to final enforcement penalties for disposal, but first and foremost, it's like, how do people understand, know, how's the outreach, what's the infrastructure to enable the bans? Because I would think, from 20,000 feet, as much of a proponent I am of banning items, most things that are disposed of are recyclable or shouldn't be there to begin with. The track record is not what I would say is great so far, so we need to look at that overall, and with batteries in particular, seems dangerous if there's not.
Thank you. Sharon Kishida.
Okay, sorry. Yes, I guess I want to get some more clarity on Redwood's desire to kind of siphon off a certain portion of the batteries, and maybe hear from Mark how that would impact the viability of the EPR program.
I wasn't sure if there was an order. Do you want me to respond first or?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do want to hear from you how this all works from financially. How does that work if you have certain players saying, no, I want this space and somebody else? What does that do?
Yeah, so with so the part of the reason to have the batteries go through the stewardship organization has to do with that the state oversight. The state would like to be able to see what is actually being collected. So as part of that plan, the stewardship organization submits they well the stewardship organization submits the plan, but then the organization goes and gets the data from the plan members about what they're importing. And the number that's used is a population of percentage based on the US, because most members don't know what they sell in an individual state in some cases. What they know is they know what they import into the US or manufacture and sell in the US, but once it goes to a retailer, for example, it can go to 10 different states from a distribution hub. So the producers will know in the case of factoring in collection rates, they'll know what the denominator is, but they won't know what the numerator is if those products aren't recorded as part of a stewardship program. So if we get into metrics, that's part of the reason to be able to get an accurate number for what's actually collected. The stewardship organization has to know what those products are or what is being collected. So that's one of the big reasons for making sure that they go through the stewardship organization. The other one is that there are a lot of key parts in the model bill that talks about best practices and making sure the products are, if we want to have them processed domestically and they go through again those best practices, or so that they're being recycled properly. Not that those in the room here don't recycle properly. I'm just saying it's just a provision so that the state has oversight to make sure that they're managed appropriately. So those are really the two key components to make sure that the state has the oversight and that the numbers that are being reported are accurate.
Thank you. I mean, I guess I would be concerned, if Redwood does it and somebody else wants to do it, I imagine the reporting is really important. And it really kind of fractures it. So thank you.
Councilor Delgado.
Thank you. Yeah, I actually am just kind of more curious about the same topic as well. I, for one, I think the reporting piece is important. But I also see it as, I don't know if Redwood or any other organization for that matter, are they asking for a specific piece of this, or are they just asking to be allowed to continue to do the work that they're already doing? Because if that's the case, then I would see it as it's better to have multiple options for folks to be able to recycle. I think that's the whole point of what we're here in the first place. So I wouldn't want to see us do something that would hurt other businesses that are already doing the work that we are essentially trying to have done. So, and I know I'm simplifying it. I'm probably not understanding all the other pieces of it. And thank you, Mark, for explaining the piece on, making sure that we have accurate reporting. But at the end of the day, if the goal is to recycle, then I think, the more folks that have that opportunity, I think the better. That's at least in my opinion.
Thank you. Mr. Zotos.
Yeah, I'd love to be able to respond. Councilor Delgado, I think you actually distilled the issue pretty succinctly here. It is simple. I mean, what Redwood is proposing, and not just Redwood, once again, other industry players in this space, is not future state or hypothetical. It's work we're already doing. When our company launched to recycle lithium-ion batteries at end of life, we literally started having consumers send us old iPhones, tablets, lithium-ion batteries from drills just to our office. And we decided there's a massive need and avenue for consumers here to recycle these batteries. So we extended a nationwide consumer recycling program that we're pretty proud of. We have a lot more work to do there. We're still, early innings to what we could offer. We work with other players on this call, from Call to Recycle. We recycle a lot of the batteries they collect. We're proud of the work they're doing. We think that's a really good thing. But to Councilor Delgado's point, if we're looking at abysmal collection and recycling rates for batteries writ large, we do need to bring more solutions to bear we shouldn't penalize industry players who are subsidizing collection free to consumer. That's what Redwood does, at least, in order to acquire feedstock for what we do with the materials, which is we recycle them very sustainably here in America, 95% or better metal recovery rate. We take that lithium, that nickel, that cobalt, and we remanufacture battery components that go towards clean energy technologies right here in America. So that's why we've been very vocal on these topics. We think broader collection and a stewardship program is a good thing here for batteries. We just think there is a more cohesive approach rather than a limited one, which that material forfeiture provision would legally limit what companies like mine could do or collect. So, in terms of questions on reporting, with the collection work we already do across ecosystems, we recycle EV batteries. We're the largest EV battery recycler in the country, as well as stationary storage. We have to adhere to very robust federal, state, local compliance, shipping, packaging, EPA guidelines. We are more than okay to report on any data here. We actually already have to do this for our consumer collection efforts across states. So some of the language we've actually offered up has been very forthcoming to say, let battery recyclers who are directly collecting provide that data. We could actually help the stewardship program in areas where they may be failing to meet convenience standards or may need help to meet convenience standards. We could help them with some of our existing collection work as well. So that's an area where I think we can all work together here. The societal issue is there, which there clearly is, batteries in waste streams, batteries causing fires. We should bring the stewardship organization solution to bear, and we should bring the industry solution that wants the critical minerals directly to bear as well. So that's what we're saying. We have a lot of good work and proposals that have gone into this. We think there's an easy way to reimagine some elements to this bill to really account for that broader response.
Thank you. Yep.
I'm wondering if Mark, or I know Karen Stewart is also on the call. She worked for Call to Recycle that, or at least she was on the call previous. I'm wondering if it could be elaborated on, like, how a separate collector, separate from the stewardship organization, harms other players in the program.
I'm waiting to see if Karen is on first before
Sorry,
you've heard from me a lot.
Right. Hi, so I'm Karen Stewart with Call to Recycle. I'm the Director of Steward Services here. So, just hearing all of the conversation, I wouldn't say harm, right? I think there's a way to thread the needle, just as Daniel has mentioned before, where there has to be a balance to understand the pros and cons to each element that right now in the current laws, the BSO, Battery Stewardship Organization, is held accountable to. If there are ways in which batteries leave the system that aren't accounted for, right now in current law, the program gets penalized for it because we don't collect them, we don't get accounted for, and we have said in our plan, this is what we're going to do. Now, in future laws, that can be worked out, right? So as long as there are pieces, so for instance, the collection rate, as we were talking about before, we have to propose in plan the rate for the first 3 years of the program. We do a lot of analysis, we do a lot of research, and we propose that. If we're held accountable to that, but then batteries just leave the system, then that's an issue because we as representing the industry look like we're not doing our position. However, if that's not part of the law and we can collectively collect them together and we're not held accountable to that, there could be multiple players in the battery collection scheme. Along with and just one other example, and then I'll be quiet. The marketing, right? So there are awareness metrics that was brought up before. We do an annual survey of residents to understand, do they know that they can recycle batteries, and can they? And so we do a lot of education outreach in that vein. So we would just, again, want to make sure that we're not pointing consumers in the opposite directions. There has to be a collective voice so that together we are all pushing this information. So, I just want to say that there are opportunities for partnership, and I think we just have to keep that conversation open.
I think Daniel, you're up next.
Yeah, thanks for allowing the continued public debate on this. We welcome it. We think it's really healthy for what we're trying to do here. I would just double down once again. I think in terms of harm to the program or things like that, we've heard previous comments about, well, if certain market players only take the valuable batteries, how can we subsidize the rest of the program? Our very candid response to that has been, what is the legacy of EPR that has existed? It's for producers to manage, hard to manage, possibly unwanted or negative value products. Our response to that is, if the market is showing up to manage the wanted materials, that's a good thing, especially if we look at the stark nature and broad sweeping impact of battery safety in the first place. To Councillor Delgado's point, we need more players collecting batteries. So I don't think there's this cannibalizing nature out there. I've yet to see any, demonstration as to how that would occur. And I would continue to say the industry, at least speaking for Redwood here, is more than willing to hold ourselves to high standards. We've proposed definitions for advanced battery recyclers that would hold us to a high standard in terms of the processing we're supposed to do, the environmental standard associated with that, et cetera. So, I think there's some really goodwill language put forward from industry here that actually would ensure a lot of the things this bill speaks to in spirit, which is domestic manufacturing, onshoring critical minerals, things like that, making sure recycling processing is happening. There's a way for us to actually thread that needle. So I appreciate, the commentary from numerous colleagues on this call. This is not an issue that has been worked out in other states, to be clear. And there was a comment earlier in terms of, what's the data from some of these states? The answer to that is we haven't seen it yet. It's very early innings in terms of bills that have been passed. And I would also join the advocates in their commentary around urgency for some of these bills. Redwood has very publicly stated we'd like to see sooner phase-in times for these programs. We've joined in partnership with a lot of metal recyclers across the country and scrapyards who are dealing with fires today, who want more immediate responses today as well. So we hear that urgency. We'd welcome that urgency and improve timelines. And we want to help everyone out here with the work we do. We just want to be allowed to do it.
Thank you. Phil Goddard.
Thank you. Listening to this conversation, it's a very good conversation. It reminds me, we were working on paint for many, many years. And on the Cape, we were the grantee from a DEP grant to do the paint collection on the Cape through a DEP grant. And we continue to do latex paint collection. Huge. And the reason I bring this up is there's a very good recycler of paint in Massachusetts called Recolor. And they're well established, and their fear from talking to the owner is that a program might exclude them or they'll not get what they've been building for a lot of years. So it's kind of a similar topic here. So it's just for the commission overall on these programs, just consider that those that have done the work with the infrastructure to build it and are doing the recycling, it's a valid point. They're up there doing it now. So on the corollary side with paint, we want to, reward them for making that effort. But at the same time, as Karen says, the industry needs to get the credit for it, needs to be tracked properly. So there maybe is a way to thread this needle on these programs because they've gone on so long without any programs in the state. Others have come up. But I know that one particular entity in the paint world is a similar kind of situation. I don't know if that's the answer or anything right now, but it's just something that I want to put out there for consideration. Thank you.
Mark.
Yeah, just briefly, one of the things that we often hear in discussions in some of the other states that either are in the process or have passed laws is making sure that we eliminate confusion. So going back to Juanita's comment about her recalled battery, not knowing where to go or getting turned away, that's a big point that comes up, that we don't want consumers to get turned away. So in the legislative language, it requires the collection of all the different battery types. And there are a lot of things that happen behind the scenes that are in the legislation, such as, you know, the plan submission, the reporting, the marketing, the education, things that were talked about here just a little bit ago. Those are all items that are part of the bill. And just to be clear, in the model bill that we have, we don't say that there should be one stewardship organization. The industry welcomes competition and multiple players in the market. Some states choose not to do that, but that is not part of the model bill. We look at it and say we like the option to have one or more stewardship organizations to be able to increase that footprint, provided that everybody's following the same set of rules, because there are a lot of rules and there's a lot of background work, investment, things that have to happen to be able to make a program a reality.
Thank you. John?
Hi, can you guys see me okay?
I can hear you. Yep.
You can hear me? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, because I'm not seeing myself, so I'm not sure. Anyway, I just wanted to offer an observation on kind of the heels of Phil's comment and the discussion we've had here with batteries, and just note that the same concern has come up with our existing mattress recyclers. So I think we're 3 for 3 on that issue right now, that existing recyclers are interested and concerned about how they would fit into an EPR system. So just wanted to kind of note that theme that seems to be emerging here.
Thanks, John. Daniel?
My final comment, I promise I'll make it quick. I appreciate John's comments on this. I'd say the very important distinction from battery recyclers here and mattress recyclers is mattresses do not contain strategic critical minerals important for national security and clean energy adoption, such as batteries do. We're really talking about lithium-ion batteries. So that is a huge distinction where industry players and recyclers having direct access, so long as they're playing by the rules, of course, should be able to continue the work they're doing. Mattresses don't contain lithium, cobalt, nickel, etc. So it's a really important distinction in terms of inherent value within this scheme or ecosystem that really needs to be accounted for if we're going to uphold domestic clean energy goals and critical mineral security aspirations as well.
Thank you. Yes.
It strikes me that this is, maybe hasn't been solved for batteries in other places, but I think it's something that's very much, as John said, discussed elsewhere. And, you know, so whether it's additional, you know, multiple stewardship organizations or simply a system of having service providers register with stewardship organization, but not be the designated one contractor or whatever. I do think that this is, I understand the issue. It's resolvable, it seems.
Yes.
I wanted to circle back to Janet's comment before about the ban on disposal of batteries that is currently part of this model bill. Well, and the bill before the Massachusetts legislature. While I do think it's important to have that enforcement capability, I don't think that that's really the function of it. I think it's more so in the marketing and education of a collection program that it can be an added motivation factor to the general public to know that it's against the law to put a battery in the trash. I think that would be a helpful parameter, not specifically from an enforcement perspective, because I think all the players in the supply chain, particularly on the disposal or recycling end, don't want batteries there. So I don't think we're going to be enforcing on like a company that dumped a load of batteries into the trash. But I think it's important for like a large business to be appropriately managing material that they're responsible for disposing of, you know, in an appropriate way. So I think it's an important provision to keep in there, but maybe not have the focus on enforcement from a like perspective of like penalizing people for what ends up in the trash. I don't know if that's helpful to address what you were saying, but I just thought it was a different take on the function of a disposal ban as part of this law. or Bill.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I see it as complementary, right? We want to say, you can't do this, and we're giving you an opportunity to appropriately dispose of
Exactly.
this. Thank you.
You said, John, can't do this and what?
I'm sorry,
I
you
think-
can't dispose of lithium ion or batteries in the trash, and we're giving you an opportunity to handle them appropriately. So it's kind of, yeah, I agree. We're not gonna be running around grabbing people off the street, but it helps education. Like, this is so bad that we're actually making it illegal, right? It's not just like you shouldn't do this because it's bad for the environment. You're gonna cause fires, right? People can die. This is a big deal. Stop, right? And then we're gonna make it easier for you to get rid of them. So I think they're complementary features of legislation. Scott?
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm what you're saying. Had my hand up when Juanita was going back to that issue. So around the country, there are some states that are comfortable with it being just a message to the consumer that it is against the law and you should not dispose of these. That means, hey, this is a real hazard and I shouldn't do this. But the states don't have the intent on really enforcing, as you can imagine, and you all know how difficult that is for something so small, particularly for primary batteries. I wanted to also go back to Janet's comment on banning sale of batteries, and that's a different issue. It shouldn't be confused with the end of the pipe in disposal. It is really a way to ensure that the producers of the batteries that are covered in the law are actually paying into the system. Now it does get a little, I don't know, more complicated with what Daniel has mentioned about, being outside of the system, if you will, and not needing those funds. But every single EPR law in the country does have that provision in it. I have not seen a state enforce in that way, but I have seen some states say, hey, this large company is selling to a retailer and calling the retailer up and saying, hey, these guys aren't part of this plan. And when the retailer sends a letter to that company, they come back and they actually become part of the program. So it's a lever. It's kind of called the nuclear option, if you will, for states, because having a company not be able to sell into a state is a real big deal. But the retailers have played a very collaborative approach here and role with the state agencies by sending that letter to the producers and saying, hey, you got to be in compliance with the law, and that has worked.
Just a quick comment, Sue Smith with the Massachusetts Attorney General's office here for Tracy Triplett. I am kind of struck by the way this conversation has gone, because it really does seem like, obviously, we do not want these causing issues in landfills or elsewhere, but not only that, it seems that industry, and especially those that are already in the business of recycling batteries, want these batteries. This is different than other cases where it might just be useless product or solid waste, because in fact it has strategic value. And so I do wonder, and kind of leading into this idea of increasing consumer awareness of recycling options, if there's been discussion of some sort of consumer rebate for their batteries, and to what degree, Mark or Scott, that you could weigh in on consumer rebates. I know this is late in the conversation, but I'm very curious about that, and kind of how that functions as part of the financial analysis.
Scott?
Well, I can say that there have been products where there have been sort of deposits put on, or rebates, or we call it I forget the term we're using, but when you get it back, you get at least $5. So thermostats is an example. Worked with the state of Maine. They had the first thermostat EPR law, and they put in place a $5 bounty. That's the word, a bounty. So if you're a contractor or a homeowner, you bring back your thermostat that at that time always had mercury in it, then it was a very good incentive to bring it back. I think it's, it does add a lot of costs. So you're not going to get the producers to, contribute to that if those batteries can be collected without that that added cost. And so you're seeing there's a big demand pull here for getting most of those back. I don't know if primary batteries, has the same pull to it. There's still, mining issues and others along the supply chain in terms of impacts. But I'd say that it is not typically thought of for something, and then you see the deposit law, how difficult that is, where the consumer's paying something and then they get back that same amount. I think the bounty is more typically used for a toxic product like thermostats were, and it has not been discussed around the country for batteries at this point.
Thank you.
Thanks. Karen Stewart.
Yes, thank you. So I just wanted to add on to what Scott mentioned with some facts from our program. So when we operate an all battery program, almost 65% of the weight collected is an alkaline battery, which is actually a cost negative. There's very little value in those batteries when they are recycled. The batteries with the highest value are the high cobalt, high nickel, lithium ion, and that's typically what everybody's scrambling over, but they are, probably 20% or less of the total weight we collect annually in our all battery program. So I just want to kind of, clarify kind of what we see when we operate these and where the money kind of comes from or where it doesn't, where it's an expense.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Ray.
Following up on that point you just made, Karen, does the ratio at which you collect correspond to sort of the market presence of alkaline batteries versus the lithium ion?
It correlates with the use or how long it takes for them to reach end of life. So alkaline or single-use batteries are exactly that, right? So you buy them and you typically use them within 2 to 3 years of purchase. Whereas a well-made lithium-ion battery, even nickel metal hydride, NiCad, or small seal lead acid, that use case should present in 5 to 7, even 10 years. And so it's just a cycle that they stay with the consumer much longer than a single-use battery.
All right, any other comments from the public? Commission have any further comments? Thank you very much. It's been a very helpful discussion. And again, I would encourage written comments. This is a pretty complex area. So to the extent you've raised issues, I would encourage some more written comments. In terms of next steps, the next time the full commission meets is September 17th. The topic then is going to be, I need a reminder here, I think it's electronics, correct? Yes. Right? Sure. Yes, electronics, September 17th. There are a couple of advisory group meetings between now and then. The next one, the first plastics and packaging is on July 24th from 10 to noon. And the second electronics advisory group is on July 28th from 1 to 3. There's going to be the second plastics and packaging would be on August 28th, 10 to noon. We will be sending out a revised version of the mattress recommendation. We'll also get something out for the batteries prior to the meeting in September. And I anticipate we'll be voting on the mattress recommendation. We'll have to see with the batteries, but we'll try to get, yes.
Do you want to take the temperature on the recommendation for the batteries, how like we did it, kind of just where everyone comes?
Yeah, so I guess, I mean, I think the way we've been setting these up is a fairly broad, right? So this is we're going to align it with the PRBA. So support recommendation to enact legislation to establish an EPR law for batteries that aligns with the PRBA model. So I think something along those lines. I think, if folks are wholly uncomfortable with the PRBA model, we've heard enough about some suggested revisions or concerns with it, but does anyone just not want to go there and feel like let's say, should we not recommend an EPR? Does anyone have that viewpoint on the commission? Okay. getting that temperature. So, I think what we'll do is we'll try to capture some of the concerns that have been raised, by the public and by the commission, and we'll come up with a recommendation. This is the bare bones. We'll take a look at the proposed legislation before Massachusetts. We'll take a look at other states. Look forward to getting any kind of written comments, from the public. That was a very useful, exchange, I thought. And then we can kind of fashion a recommendation, but this is the bare bones. Make sense? All right, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Sorry. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? We are adjourned. Thanks, everyone. Have a good August.
Thank you.
Thank you. Productive meeting.